This is the first of my D&D adventures, so to speak. And I suppose you could call it my first. It was my first experience, we'll say that. Not like my first, but not really my first introduction, or proper introduction. Let's just say, my first experience with D&D was a bad one. And it kind of deterred me from playing D&D for a long while, actually. Until I had later picked it up years down the road. Let's just call this one Rohan Nighthawk and the Meat Grinder Gauntlet. So, my buddy Scott was DMing this game. He invited me over to play. I told him I'd never played D&D. He's like, it's cool. You'll get into it real fast. You know, it'll be great. Playing with a bunch of experienced dudes, and they can kind of show you the ropes. And I'll help you create your first character sheet, and it'll be, fun. Like, all right. And my friend Scott is kind of has a reputation on priding himself for being an asshole. That's the kind of person he was in the earlier years of which I knew him. He kind of chilled out a bit on that and leveled out later on. But when I first met him, the first couple of years, man, he prided himself on being the biggest asshole in town. you know. And yeah, he could be kind of a jerk sometimes, but he'd be really cool to hang out with other times, And anyways, he invites me over, and Keith is another one of our friends that I know. And he's the only other one among this group that I do know. The rest of the players that come over, I'm meeting for the first time. And so he's busy creating his character sheet when I get there. And Scott's all like, alright, awesome, man. And he's got all these, books and shit laid out. He's got every single D&D fucking thing that he owns laid the fuck out. And he's getting back into DMing, right? Because according to him, he hasn't actually hosted a game in forever. It's been a long time. Some of his older friends who used to DM with him back in the day are deciding they want to get together and do their thing. And he's taking notes and he's flipping through pages of his book and shit. He's like, here, create your character. And he flops a character creation sheet down in front of me. And a pencil. I'm like, okay. And he's like, start with a name and shit like that, And, I'm kind of a kid at this point in time. And I'm just like, okay. He's like, it doesn't matter. Do you want to be male or female? I guess, I'll be a dude or whatever. He's like, okay, what race do you want to be? I was like, race? And he's like, yeah. Do you Want to be a human? You want to be a dwarf? You want to be elf? You want to be a halfling? I'm like, what's a halfling? He's like, they're kind of like hobbits. It's like, oh, okay. I'm like, I don't know. I guess I'll just be a human, right? He's like, okay, what is your class? I'm like, what the fuck is that? Like, I don't know any of this stuff. Does somebody want to explain to me the mythos and stuff? And he's like, it's cool, man. Just, you've got a fighter, a cleric, a bard character. You've got rogues, and you've got rangers, and you've got wizards. It's like, oh, fuck, what's a ranger do? That sounds cool. And he's like, well, they're, you know, mostly bow and arrow dudes, but they also work on like quick attacks and stuff like that too. Quick attacking, and they're kind of like hunters and stuff. Like, okay, well, I guess I'll be that, right? That's cool. And he's like, okay, great. I'm like, can you explain the rules to me and shit? And he's all like, here. He's like, take a dice, start rolling it, and whatever number you get off this 20-sided dice, you just keep putting them in these bubbles. I'm like, are you sure I'm doing this right? I'm like, hey, Keith, man, and Keith is just immediately like, dude, don't mess with me. I'm working on some complex shit, I'm bringing back a character that I haven't brought back in like, that I haven't been using in years. I'm bringing this guy back. I've got to change it up a bit. Like, okay. And he's like, just roll the dice and do what he says. Whatever. Right? So I do that and shit. And I'm just like, can somebody tell me what the fuck I'm doing after I'm done? And he's like, put, you know, NT, he put, put the initials and stuff for all the different numbers you're putting down. And I'm like, I have no fucking idea. And he's like, okay, here, just hand me it. And he fills out the rest of it for me, right? And like, first off, I'm under the assumption that, I was going to learn. You're going to sit me down and, teach me the shit and everything. And he's like, yeah, well, I've got a lot of shit to work on, It turns out that, this is a lot more work than I originally had planned. Okay. Right off the bat, not really an experience that makes me care. And then he's all like, "Man, don't call your character." He's looking at my sheet. He's like, "Don't call your character Nighthawk." And he's like, "Nighthawk? No, man, don't call your fuck character that." You know, if you can't think of a name for your character, just go off a movie or something. And he's like, "Yeah, man, here, go off one of my fantasy books that I got. I like to take inspiration from these." And he gets up and goes into his room, and he comes back, and he hands me just you know, 4 like dictionary thick, like just fantasy adventure books, right? That I had never heard of in my fucking life. And I'm just like, I'm not gonna sift through this shit and try and find a character name. Fuck that noise. I'm like, alright, I'll just pick something from a movie. And he's like, oh, you can pick something from like Hobbit or Lord of the Rings or whatever. And I was like, alright. And he's like, yeah, no, they got plenty of names in there. Yeah. And I think we ended up settling on, of course, Rohan. It's been a long time, but I'm absolutely sure we settled on Rohan. And he's like, well, if you can't think of a last name, you can just do Rohan. And Keith's just like, you know what, Nighthawk's good for a fucking last name to Rohan. And he's like, yeah. And then Keith's like, yeah, man, just put Nighthawk for his last name. I'm like, all right, whatever. And I write in, you know, Rohan Nighthawk. And then Scott jolts the page back from me, finishes up my character, flaps it back down. He goes back to what he's doing. And about 4 hours go by. I'm just there bored off my ass, waiting for these people to get here. Not really doing anything, right? Nobody's explaining to me anything about the fucking game or how to play it and shit. No one's trying to fill my head with, like, awe and wonder, no one's trying to impress me here. No one's trying to sell me on D&D. Just like, here you go. He's like, you know, I made up your character for you. Here you go. Oh, I think he let me choose my weapons too. And that was the only other thing I got to choose. And I went with something really weird because, of course, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, right? And I wound up choosing like like a bunch of spears that I carry on my back, and I would just like whip out. My guy would whip out a spear and use it to either stab the shit out of something or throw it at something, right? And I just had a thing of spears on my dude, and I had a crossbow for more long range action. And, of course, I had knife on the side because I was told, you don't want to have a knife on the side. All right. And so that was my character. And after, he gets done with it and shit, I'm just like waiting there and shit. I'm like, I've been waiting there for 4 hours. And he finally pivots up his head from like within his notes and shit, right? And he's just like, dude, you still sitting here? I was like, yeah. I was like, man, you should think of a story for your guy. I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, man, like, where's your dude come from? Who is he, I'm like, I don't fucking know. I don't know any of the lands in D&D. Like, what the fuck do I know? And he's like, I'll just say, he's from so-and-so town. Make up some shit, right? I'm like, I didn't want to make up a fake town and then everybody had to be like, well, where the fuck is that, Especially not, like, around seasoned veteran players. I was just like, okay, I'm thinking of stuff to write down on my notes sheet, portion